There's a man every woman has met, whether in passing or in heartbreak. He's charming, not in the cartoonish, exaggerated way of a seducer with a silk shirt and practiced lines, but in the quieter, more dangerous form. The charm that looks like attentiveness, the gaze that feels like a mirror, the laughter that always finds the right moment. He seems awake, not just to you, but to life, to music, to art, to late-night philosophy. You find yourself opening up, not because he pressures you to, but because it feels natural. It feels safe. And for a moment, you wonder if this, finally, is someone who gets it, who gets you. But Alain de Botton, ever the surgeon of modern love's delusions, warned us of this very man. Not because he is evil, not because he plans to wound, but because he is fragmented. And unlike the honest man who admits his fears, the fragmented man cloaks them in depth. He is intelligent enough to speak of wounds without ever tending to them. He can quote Rilke on love and still leave without saying goodbye. He can sit with your sorrow on Tuesday and be in another woman's bed by Friday. Not because he is a liar, but because intimacy to him is performance art, something he dips into, not something he dwells in. He doesn't ghost, he lingers, and that's what makes him so dangerous. He knows just how much to give to keep hope alive, but not enough to build anything real. He offers possibility instead of presence, dreams instead of devotion, and if you're not careful, you will mistake his emotional vocabulary for emotional availability. You'll confuse his hunger for connection with a capacity to love. But this man doesn't truly want to be known. He wants to be adored, and the moment he feels truly seen, flaws, fears, contradictions, he vanishes, not loudly, but with a kind of poetic distance that makes it feel like your heartbreak was some philosophical tragedy rather than the result of someone's inability to choose. De Botton exposes this dynamic not to shame, but to awaken, to reveal how many of us, men included, are living in narratives we did not write. This man, the charming wanderer, was not born this way. He was trained, shaped by a culture that rewards detachment, that mocks commitment as confinement, that tells men their worth lies in options, not in depth. So he grows up believing that settling down is settling for less, that choosing one woman means losing all others, and that love, real love, will somehow erase his individuality. And so he lives suspended in a perpetual audition for something he secretly hopes never becomes permanent. This is the curse of the postmodern romantic. Endless longing, no anchoring. He collects experiences not because he is selfish, but because he's scared of stillness, of the mirror, of the slow, grinding intimacy that does not flatter but refines. And yet, he can talk about it all. He can analyze himself, even criticize himself. I'm bad at relationships, he'll say with a knowing grin, as if insight is enough. But insight without responsibility is just performance. And he knows it somewhere beneath the charm. Because deep down, he is lonely. Not for company, which he can find easily, but for communion. The kind that requires accountability. The kind that forces a man to look someone in the eye and say, "I'm staying." The tragedy is many women who encounter this man think they can love him into wholeness. They believe their understanding, their patience, their softness will be enough to convince him to choose. But you cannot outlove someone's avoidance. You cannot build a bridge where the other side refuses to land.
And no matter how articulate, how poetic, how emotionally intelligent this man appears, if he cannot commit to his own growth, he will never commit to you. What de Botton offers us is not cynicism, but clarity, a call to see through the performance, to realize that depth is not in what someone can say. It's what they're willing to do, to endure, to repair, to stay when it's hard, to grow alongside you, not just beside you. The man who can't do that isn't evil. He's just not ready. And readiness, in the end, is not a feeling, it's a choice. The charming man may steer your soul, but only the grounded man can build with you. Only the present man, the flawed but willing man, is worth the risk of love. Because love is not about finding someone who dazzled you. It's about finding someone who will keep showing up when the lights go out.
So why does he keep appearing in your life? Why does this same man, different face, different name, replay like a myth every few years, always with the same beginning, the same promise, and the same quiet vanishing? The answer, de Botton might say, lies less in the man and more in the mirror. For as much as we are wounded by these half-loves, many of us are also complicit in the script, not because we want to suffer, but because we've been conditioned to mistake intensity for intimacy. We think the spark, the ache, the chase, those cinematic flares of emotion are proof of love's authenticity. We have confused chaos with chemistry, and the charming man thrives in this confusion. He is the mirror of every romantic illusion we carry, the embodiment of the fantasy that love should be effortless, that a perfect connection should not require confrontation, that someone out there exists who will intuit all our needs without us ever needing to speak them aloud. We crave magic, not maturity, and so we don't notice at first when his enchantment lacks a foundation. We overlook the small evasions, the emotional absences, the unwillingness to speak about a future, because we are caught in the dream. And the dream is addictive. But here's the thing about dreams. They disappear at dawn. And when they do, what remains is not just heartbreak, but disillusionment. A sense that something was stolen, that we were tricked. But the truth is harder to swallow. We were willing participants, not out of weakness, but out of longing, out of the deep, often unspoken belief that love is supposed to hurt a little, that it's supposed to stretch us, torment us, awaken us. De Botton warns us about this cultural inheritance, the romanticism that teaches us suffering is noble, that the unattainable is more valuable, that commitment is for the unimaginative. And men, especially emotionally literate men, have learned to weaponize this romantic myth, not with cruelty, but with competence. They read the right books. They reflect just enough. They know the language of self-awareness, and they use it like armor. "I'm working on myself," he says, and you believe him. Because isn't that what growth looks like? Isn't that what you want? A man in process, a man aware of his own complexity. But pay attention. If the work is never followed by change, it is not growth. It is self-preservation dressed as evolution. The tragic brilliance of the charming man is that he can give you just enough hope to keep you waiting. And you will wait, because you've already invested, because you've already seen glimpses of what he could be, because letting go would mean admitting that the connection wasn't real. But Alain de Botton teaches us something brutal and freeing. Love is not about potential. Love is not what could be, it's what is. A man's willingness to love is not measured by how he talks about love, but by how he shows up when it is inconvenient, unglamorous, or slow. And for the man himself, this endless cycle of charm and retreat is not sustainable. It exhausts him.
He becomes a ghost, not only to others, but to himself. He fears commitment because commitment demands structure, and structure threatens the illusion of endless possibility. He fears being pinned down, not by a woman, but by his own truth. Because deep down he knows, if he were to stop running, if he were to truly sit still and build something, he would have to face all the selves he's been avoiding. The failures, the guilt, the cowardice dressed as freedom. De Botton's brilliance lies in his refusal to glamorize this internal drama. He dismantles the myth of the tortured romantic and replaces it with a question. What are you actually doing with your love? What are you building with it? Because love, when it is real, is not a feeling, it is a task. It is a discipline. It is the art of showing up, not just for someone else, but for yourself again and again, even when the novelty wears off, especially then. And here is the great irony. The very man who refuses to commit because he fears losing himself is the one who remains perpetually lost. He fears love will reduce him, but in avoiding it, he becomes hollow. All outer richness, no inner anchor. He lives for the chase, the thrill, the emotional high, but never the deep peace of being known and chosen daily. He mistakes freedom for flight, and flight, no matter how graceful, cannot build a home. If you are a man who recognizes yourself here, the warning is not to shame you, it is to wake you. To see that your charm is not evil, but it is a mask. A beautiful, well-practiced mask that allows you to hide from the terrifying simplicity of love's true demands. Vulnerability, repetition, trust, stillness. And if you are a woman who's loved this man, the lesson is not to harden, but to clarify. To understand that the man who can speak of love is not necessarily the man who can practice it. That attention is not affection. That eloquence is not evidence. The man who will not commit is not the enemy, but he is not your answer. Because the love you deserve is not found in the man who dazzles you in moments. It is in the man who digs with you through seasons. The one who may not say all the right things, but who does the hard thing. He stays.
Yet this isn't just about romance. It's about how men are taught to fear surrender. Not just to a woman, but to the unfamiliar train of emotional honesty. Society does not prepare men to build intimacy. It prepares them to perform desirability, to win affection through gestures, words, confidence, and presence, but not through rootedness, not through the quiet, daily acts of devotion that demand neither charm nor applause. In fact, many men have never seen a model of this kind of love. What they've seen is conquest. What they've inherited is performance. And the charming man is simply the most graceful actor in that tragic play. Alain de Botton points out that we don't fall in love with someone because they're right for us. We fall in love because they match our emotional familiar, which means that if chaos, inconsistency, or emotional distance were part of how we learn to love, then we'll keep gravitating toward people who recreate that storm. The charming man, who always seems just out of reach, provides the perfect echo of our earliest imprints. He feels like home not because he is safe, but because he is known. And that's what makes him so hard to release. But what do we do when we realize that attraction is often a trap? When we see, maybe for the first time, that our patterns aren't accidents, but invitations to repeat what hurt us, hoping this time the ending will be different. That is where maturity begins. Not in the absence of longing, but in the interrogation of it. Not in avoiding connection, but in learning to choose differently. To choose not who excites us most, but who meets us most honestly. Who reflects our healed self, not just our wounded one. For the man who lives in charm, the reckoning comes slowly. He begins to sense that he is adored not for who he is, but for the version he projects.
The applause he receives is hollow because no one truly sees him, and he has made that impossible because he never stayed long enough to be truly seen. Charm, after all, is a mask with a timer. It cracks under the weight of real relationship. And when it does, the man behind it is often startled because the world no longer responds to his allure. It demands substance. It demands presence. And presence is terrifying to the charming man because presence requires a man to give up the exit, to sit in discomfort, to admit that his freedom has come at the cost of knowing himself. That all the women he's loved were not just relationships, but missed opportunities to build something real, not because they weren't right, but because he wasn't ready. And the cruelest truth is that sometimes, by the time he is ready, no one is left waiting. De Botton doesn't offer easy answers, but he offers clarity. He tells us that love is not an achievement, but a daily ritual. That the greatest erotic act is attention. That the most romantic gesture is repetition. To the man who resists this, it sounds boring. To the man who is ready, it sounds like relief. Because to be done performing, to be done chasing, to be done dazzling, that is peace. That is intimacy, and that is love. So if you are the man who feels this aching gap, who has kept women orbiting, who has mastered the art of arrival but not of remaining, know this: there is no shame in the mask, only in refusing to remove it. You were not taught how to build a relationship, but you can learn. You were taught to keep running, but you can choose to stay. Not for her, not even for them, but for you. Because a man who finally chooses to stay fully, deeply, without hiding, is a man who has finally come home. And if you are the woman who has waited, who has heard all the right words but never seen the follow-through, who has questioned your worth because he couldn't choose you, remember, you were never too much. You were simply asking for what he was never ready to give. Don't chase the echo of what almost was. Don't mourn a man who only knew how to begin. Mourn instead the time he spent doubting your instincts. And then return to yourself. Not harder, not colder, but wiser. Because in the end, charm fades, but character builds. And while the charming man will continue to dazzle crowds, the man who chooses to commit, quietly, consistently, bravely, he may not be as visible, but he is the one who changes everything. He is the one who stays. And maybe that's the man we should fear losing most. Not the one who knew how to make us feel seen, but the one who never needed the spotlight to choose us. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.